Hey guys, wanted to do a quick video because I've got some breaking news you might have already heard or you might not have because it literally just happened. About 30 minutes ago, Christie dropped out of the presidential race.
I've always said that if there came a point in time in this race where I couldn't see a path to accomplishing that goal, that I would get out. And it's clear to me tonight that there isn't a path for me to win the nomination, which is why I'm suspending my campaign tonight for President of the United States. I know, and I can see it from some of the faces here, that I'm disappointing some people by doing this. People who believe in our message and believe in what we've been doing. I also know, though, it's the right thing for me to do.
It's kind of a surprise, and the way he did it was particularly interesting. Most candidates will make a tweet or in a specific interview say this is the time that I'm dropping out, or send a memo to their staff. But what Christie did was towards the end of his event in New Hampshire, he decided just to tell the audience that he was dropping out, that he was getting text messages from people telling him to stay in, and that's why he was considering staying in the race, but ultimately decided to drop out. It's certainly big news because Christie really would have an argument for running at least until you get to New Hampshire, because he was polling consistently from 10% to 13% of the vote. It's not great, but he certainly was a real factor in that regard. But what I think is interesting is he sees the writing on the wall, and he's so oppositional to Trump that he wants to make way for Haley. And I think with Christie dropping out, this is officially a Republican primary race, this sleepy race that everybody said would be so easy for Trump to win. With Christie dropping out specifically, I don't think that's going to happen. And I think at least we are going to see this primary roll in until at least Super Tuesday. Trump might very well, and I expect him to, he might very well crush Nikki Haley on Super Tuesday. But expect this to be a jab for jab fight until then. What's interesting to me also is the common knowledge of people would think that Christie would be eager to endorse Haley, despite his many criticisms of Haley, despite him saying that Haley was not effective enough on going after Trump, certainly not as direct as Christie was. But obviously, I don't think Nikki Haley wants Christie's endorsement because she's trying to walk this very awkward tightrope, which might come to bite her in the butt later on, of obviously, as everybody knows, of her not wanting to directly criticize Trump, but her also wanting to contrast some key differences between her and the former president. So with Christie, she wants all the anti-Trump vote. So she wants Christie to drop out. And naturally, most of the 10% that he's been polling will go into Nikki Haley's camp. If she got the endorsement of Christie, then she would be seen as too anti-Trump. Then she would blow her potential vice presidential opportunity, which would be an issue, obviously. And she'd have less of a clear path in case Trump would later crush her. But she knows that all of that 10%, all of that vote, pretty much all of it will not go to Trump. But she wants to retain some of the people who are wary of Trump, but don't necessarily hate him reflexively. So it's a very awkward tightrope. Do not expect Christie to endorse Nikki Haley. I think the endorsement that Haley truly wants for South Carolina, which would make a big difference and help her, would be, remember him, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. He said he may or may not endorse. I'd be surprised if he decides to endorse at the end of the day. But yeah, very, very interesting news. So wanted to bring that up. Haley has a good shot in New Hampshire. I was going to see Christie, as I was telling you, but obviously that's not happening anymore. But Haley has a great shot in New Hampshire. There was one poll released about a week ago that showed her 20 points from Trump. Before, there's a previous poll that showed her 14 points down from Trump. Most recent poll from American Research Group, which is a New Hampshire local poll. So you want to pay attention to the polls that are local. They happen to be the most accurate if they're polling their own neck of the woods, obviously. That poll only has a 7-point spread, I believe, Trump at 39, Haley at 32. 7-point spread. And with that poll, Christie was polling at 12%. So if there's a 7-point spread and you pretty much add all of Christie's totals to Nikki Haley, then she very much has a shot. Now, of course, the argument is, well, in the poll in South Carolina, she's getting crushed. So she'll just go to South Carolina and and get decimated. But momentum is everything. And remember, the expectations for everybody that wasn't Trump was so low that even if they meet in the middle, that's kind of seen as a victory. Remember, Bill Clinton's famous second place finish to Paul Tsongas in the New Hampshire primary. He famously declared himself the comeback kid, even though he did not actually win the state of New Hampshire. Same thing, I believe, with Iowa, with George H.W. Bush saying he got the big mo, and Pat Robertson actually won Iowa. So, second place is very meaningful. It actually does mean quite a bit. And I think what will happen is Christie was even polling at 3 to 4%, not much, 3 to 4% in Iowa. But I think that 3 to 4% will go to Nikki Haley, and she might be able to nab second place, particularly if Haley nabs second place and does better than expected and beats DeSantis. And I think Haley wants DeSantis to stay in the race as long as possible, so that's a different conversation to have. But at least in that regard, the votes of Chris Christie will go to Haley. And Haley is only about 3 points behind DeSantis in the moment in the polls, in Iowa specifically. So that might very well convert over to her. So you'll see a second video from me tonight. You'll get a double video because I'll be doing some longer analysis about the debate. But wanted to give you some interesting news about Chris Christie. Rest in peace and in memoriam of the campaign that no longer is. Take care, guys.